I'm 90 years old, and I don't sleep much anymore.
Not because my body won't let me, but because at this age, sleep feels like rehearsal for something permanent, and I'm not quite ready yet. There's something I need to tell you first. Something that's been sitting in my chest for years, getting heavier with each birthday I didn't expect to see. My hands shake now when I pour my morning coffee. The cup rattles against the saucer, making a sound that seems too loud in this quiet house. Everything seems loud when you're alone. The refrigerator hum, the clock ticking, your own breathing. I sit at this same kitchen table every morning before sunrise, watching the darkness slowly turn gray, then gold, then just another day. And in that quiet space between night and morning, the memories come. Not the big ones. Not the moments you'd put in a photo album or tell at parties. It's the small ones that haunt me now, the way my wife used to hum while folding laundry. How my son's face lit up when I came through the door back, when I still came home early enough to see it. The exact shade of evening light that came through our kitchen window on Tuesday afternoons, when I was usually still at the office. These memories arrive uninvited, like old friends who know you're dying and want to say goodbye. I need to tell you something before those goodbyes run out. Not because I want sympathy, not because I think I deserve forgiveness, but because I've reached the age where honesty is the only currency I have left, and maybe, just maybe, my mistakes can mean something if someone hears them in time. I wasn't a bad man. That matters to me even now. I want you to know that. I never hit anyone, never cheated, never stole. I showed up to work every single day for 41 years. I paid every bill on time. I kept my word, at least in the ways that could be measured and counted and put on a resume. From the outside, my life probably looked respectable, stable, even successful. But respectability has a way of hiding empty rooms. When I was young, 23, to be exact, I married a girl named Sarah. Not because I was swept away by romance, though she was pretty and kind and laughed at my terrible jokes. I married her because it felt like the next logical step, because my parents approved, because all my friends were doing it, because I thought that's what men did when they were ready to be taken seriously. She believed in me in a way I didn't yet believe in myself. She'd look at me like I was going to do something important someday, like I was special somehow. It made me feel 10 feet tall. It also made me feel like I had to prove her right. On our wedding night, I remember lying awake next to her, feeling this strange mix of pride and panic. I'd promised to take care of her, to build a good life, to be the man she saw when she looked at me with those hopeful eyes. I told myself I would make her happy, later, once things were more settled. Once I'd established myself, that word later became my favorite lie. In my 30s, work became my identity, not because I loved it. I didn't. I sold insurance, for God's sake. But it gave me something I desperately needed, a sense of forward motion, a feeling that I was building toward something, even if I couldn't quite name what. Promotions felt like proof of worth. Long hours felt like sacrifice. Late nights at the office felt noble, like I was doing what needed to be done. Sarah never complained, not directly. She'd make dinner and keep it warm. She'd kiss me when I finally came home, even when it was past 9. She'd ask about my day, and I'd give her the highlights, the numbers, the deals, the problems I'd solved. I never asked about hers. Not really. Not in a way that invited truth. I'd say, "How was your day?" But I was already thinking about tomorrow's meetings while she answered. I heard her voice, but I didn't always hear her. I didn't notice when she stopped sharing the small things. The funny moment at the grocery store, the book she was reading, the thought she had while looking out the window. She learned to keep her inner life to herself, not because I told her to, but because my distraction taught her that her thoughts weren't urgent enough to interrupt my schedule. We were polite roommates who occasionally had sex and called it intimacy. Then we had a child. The nurse placed my son in my arms, and for the first time in years, everything inside me went completely silent. No plans, no ambitions, no mental to-do lists running in the background. Just this tiny person, his eyes barely open, his hand wrapped around my finger with shocking strength. I made a promise in that moment, not out loud, just to myself in that hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and new beginnings. I promised I would be different, present. I wouldn't miss this. And I meant it. God, I meant it. For the first few years, I actually kept that promise. I came home earlier. I played on the floor until my back hurt. I read "Goodnight Moon" so many times I could recite it in my sleep. Those years felt full, even when they were exhausting. But old patterns don't die. They just wait for you to get comfortable. Work started creeping back in, not all at once. Just 15 extra minutes here, one Saturday morning there. An important client who needed attention, a deadline that couldn't wait. My son was 4 when I missed his preschool performance. He was supposed to be a tree in some kind of nature play. Sarah said he kept looking for me in the audience, his little face scanning the crowd. I had a meeting I couldn't reschedule, a deal that would mean a nice bonus, something that felt important at the time. I can still see that bonus check. I can't remember what we spent it on, but I can see my son's face when I got home that night, how he said, "It's okay, Daddy," in a voice that was trying very hard to mean it. 4 years old and already learning that Daddy's work was more important than watching him be a tree. The years moved faster after that. Childhood, I learned too late, doesn't stretch as long as you think it will when you're postponing things. School events came and went. Soccer games, science fairs, parent-teacher conferences that Sarah handled alone. I always had a reason, always had something urgent. My son stopped asking me to come, not with anger, just with acceptance. He adjusted his expectations to match my availability. By the time he was a teenager, we were strangers who shared a last name and occasionally sat at the same table. I'd try to start conversations. How was school? Do you need help with homework? What are you interested in these days? He'd give me the minimum required to end the interaction politely. Fine. No thanks. Nothing much. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior, that all kids pulled away at that age. I didn't see that he'd been pulling away for years. I just finally noticed. Sarah aged beside me quietly, not dramatically. No fights, no ultimatums. She just slowly became someone I lived with, instead of someone I was building a life with. We grew efficient with each other. We coordinated schedules. We divided household tasks. We discussed logistics and budgets and whether we needed a new water heater. We stopped talking about dreams, about fears, about the people we were becoming. I assumed we were fine because nothing was obviously broken, because we still said, "I love you," before bed, even when it felt more like a habit than a feeling. Because stability, I thought, was the same as success. Then she got sick. It started with fatigue. She'd mentioned feeling tired, and I'd suggest she get more sleep, as if I'd solved something. Then came the doctor visits, the tests, the waiting rooms where we sat side by side, not talking, both of us pretending we weren't terrified. Cancer, stage 3. Treatable, they said, but serious. I remember the drive home from that appointment. The silence in the car felt different than our usual quiet, heavier, like we both knew something had shifted and there was no shifting it back. I told myself I would be better, that this was a wake-up call, that I would finally prioritize her, us, the life we'd been postponing. And I tried. I really did. I went to her chemotherapy appointments. I held her hand when she threw up. I learned to cook the bland foods she could keep down. I reorganized my schedule around her needs. But here's the thing about deathbed conversions. They can't recover decades of absence. One night, maybe 6 months into treatment, she was lying in bed, weak but awake. I was reading beside her, the kind of companionable silence that used to feel comfortable. She said my name, just my name, but in a tone I didn't recognize. I put down my book. "What is it? Do you need something?" She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "I don't think you ever really saw me." Not angry, not accusing, just sad, like she was stating a fact she'd known for years and was only now saying out loud. I started to argue, to defend myself, to list all the ways I'd provided, protected, supported, but she just shook her head. "I know you loved me. I do. But love without attention is just theory. And I've been lonely for a very long time." Those words hit me harder than the cancer diagnosis, because she was right. I'd loved her the way you love a concept, like I loved the idea of success or security, as something I owned rather than something I tended. I wanted to say something profound, to apologize in a way that would matter. But years of avoiding depth had left me without the right words. So I just held her hand and cried, and she let me. Not because it changed anything, but because she was kind, even then. She died 4 months later, on a Tuesday morning in October. The leaves outside were that impossible gold that only happens for a few days each year. She'd always loved that color. I was there. I held her hand. I told her I loved her. She squeezed my hand weakly and said, "I know. I wish it had been enough." Then she closed her eyes and drifted somewhere I couldn't follow. After she was gone, the house became impossible. Every room held a version of us that no longer existed. The kitchen where she'd hummed while cooking. The living room where she'd curled up reading. The bedroom where I'd slept beside her for 45 years, usually turned away. I couldn't sell it, couldn't stay. So I just existed in it, like a ghost haunting the scene of my own life. My son came for the funeral. He was in his early 40s by then, successful, married, had kids of his own. We hugged at the service, and it felt like hugging a stranger with my face. He stayed for a week, sorting through his mother's things, being helpful and polite. We talked about logistics, about the will, about what to do with her clothes. We didn't talk about the fact that she'd been lonely, that I'd been absent, that we'd spent decades in the same house without really knowing each other. On his last day, I walked him to his car. I wanted to say something real, something that acknowledged the years of distance, something that might start to build a bridge. But 40 years of practiced avoidance doesn't disappear just because you want it to. So I said, drive safe. Call when you get home. And he said, I will. Take care of yourself, Dad. Then he drove away, and I stood in the driveway watching his taillights disappear, knowing I'd just missed another chance I didn't know how to take. The years after Sarah's death blurred together. Days became weeks, became years. Friends died or moved to be closer to their children. Invitations stopped coming. My body started failing in small, irritating ways. I became an old man without noticing the exact moment it happened. Now I'm here, 90 years old, sitting at this table, hands shaking, time running out. And here's what I understand now, what I need you to hear. A life can be full of achievement and still be empty of meaning. I thought providing was the same as loving. I thought my presence at the dinner table, even when my mind was elsewhere, counted as showing up. I thought love was something durable enough to survive neglect as long as my intentions were good. I was catastrophically wrong. The cost of delay is invisible until it's permanent. It doesn't announce itself with sirens or warnings. It shows up decades later, when apologies feel awkward and bridges feel too far to cross, and time feels like sand running through your fingers. There are conversations I can't have now, not because I'm physically unable, but because the foundation for those conversations eroded years ago, one postponed moment at a time. My son calls every Sunday. We talk for exactly 12 minutes. He tells me about his kids' soccer games and his wife's garden and the vacation they're replanning. I want to tell him I'm proud of him, that I'm sorry I wasn't there more, that I see now what I missed then. But we've spent so many years being polite that honesty feels like a betrayal of our carefully constructed distance. So I say that sounds nice and give everyone my love and talk to you next week. And we hang up, both of us probably feeling the same hollow ache, neither of us knowing how to name it. If I could go back, and I've spent countless sleepless hours imagining this, I wouldn't chase less success. I wouldn't quit my job or move to a cabin in the woods or any of that dramatic nonsense. I would just notice more. I would sit longer at the dinner table, even when I was tired. I would ask Sarah about her day and actually listen to the answer. I would go to my son's preschool play, even if it meant missing a meeting. I would say I love you in ways that cost me something. Time, attention, the sacrifice of my own agenda. Because here's what I've learned in these final years. Life isn't short. Life can be very, very long. But attention is limited. And once you've spent it on the wrong things, you don't get to redistribute it later. You just get to sit in a quiet house and calculate what you missed while you were busy being responsible. I don't tell you this with bitterness. I'm too tired for bitterness. I tell you this with the clarity that comes from running out of time. The kind of clarity that makes everything suddenly, painfully obvious. I loved the people in my life. I truly did. But love unexpressed is just potential. And potential doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't hold your hand when you're dying. It doesn't call you every Sunday and mean it. If any of this feels familiar to you, if you recognize yourself in my mistakes, don't wait for the right time. It doesn't exist. Speak while your voice is strong. Listen while you still can. Choose people over achievements, at least sometimes. Say the obvious things out loud instead of assuming they're understood. Because I promise you this, No one on their deathbed wishes they'd spent more time at the office. But plenty of us wish we'd spent more time at the table. I'm tired now. My hands hurt. The sun is coming up outside my window, turning everything gold again. I've said what I needed to say. Whether it matters to anyone else, I can't control. But it's out now. The truth I avoided for 90 years. That will have to be enough, because it's all I have left to give.